Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Mark Janish. This is the flagship program of AccessMediaGlobal.com, grassroots sports alternative website, AccessMediaGlobal.com. This is the From the Bench podcast. Any and all episodes of the From the Bench podcast can be heard on Stitcher and Libsyn podcast platforms. Also at AccessMediaGlobal.com, click on episodes. Underneath the player box, we will see, and you will see previous podcasts that you can choose from, listen to anytime on Libsyn, Stitcher, and hopefully Spotify. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be across the great digital landscape of the internet. Welcome to those of you listening in the United Arab Emirates, France, Peru, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and India as well. I want to welcome you to this edition of the From the Bench podcast for the next couple hours anyway. It's August the 7th, 2018. I'm in Southern California, just outside the city of Santa Barbara, 12 miles east of Santa Barbara in Carpinteria, California, southeastern California. What you would call a old style throwback beach town. And we have had a lot of warm weather. So those of you in Spain, those of you in the United Kingdom, those of you in other parts of the world that are experiencing high heat, just to let you know, you're not the only ones. On today's podcast, I'm going to address Urban Meyer, coach of Ohio State University, the Buckeyes of Ohio State in the Big Ten. You can also go to the football page and get any other Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12, SEC, and NCAA news you need regarding that. But in relating to Urban Meyer is in a lot of hot water. First of all, Zach White, assistant football coach, has been accused and implicated in abusing his wife from 2015. What Urban Meyer knew and when he knew it is the question. During Media Day on July 24th, 2018, Urban Meyer essentially lied to the media by saying he had no knowledge, didn't recollect Zach White's abuse of his wife and what he may or may not have done. He did indicate that he reported to the school, but a couple days later on Twitter, he backtracked and said he didn't answer the questions to the best of his ability. Now, this is a guy who has a couple national championships at Florida, but there is some question on how he's handled players in the past with over 31 incidents at Florida State University. The issue, among others, and this is not to malign or to mention anything regarding the Aaron Hernandez situation, found in jail and died by hanging because he just was implicated in the shooting deaths of Odin Lloyd and a few other crimes with guns that he was implicated in. That's only to say that there does seem to be a pattern of deception. There does seem to be a pattern of cover-up with Urban Meyer. Now, I'm not here to besmirch Urban Meyer's character, but in a court of law in the United States, you want to establish, if you're a prosecutorial lawyer, you want to establish a pattern of behavior. And unfortunately, Urban Meyer, by lying at Media Day, Big Ten Media Day, where all the coaches meet and discuss their teams, hopes for the new year, he's been put on administrative leave. And the Ohio State University has appointed a 6-member committee, 3 associated with the University of Ohio State University and 3 not. It'll take at least 14 days for the appropriate investigation to take place. Now, it doesn't look good for Urban Meyer because he lied to the media, but also Urban Meyer's history with Florida State, as I've indicated, it doesn't bode well. And in the climate that we are in now, with various movements, and if you are even remotely associated with any kind of abuse and cover up to this level, you're going to be done. I hesitate to mention former Penn State coach Jerry Sandusky. I only mention him as an example. What he did was egregious, atrocious, and beyond the pale. However, it is worth mentioning that a lot of these institutions want to cover up. Dr. Larry Nassar, that goes without saying. Michigan State University, abusing gymnasts in a sexual way. It's not what Michigan State wants to portray. They're a good university. However, they have been stained for the foreseeable future. I think they're going to be able to make a nice comeback, but at the same time, a culture of cover-up has been created, and it happens in all walks of life. Whether you're professional, non-professional, we can only take what you give us, but if there is some question, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And that brings me now to the assistant coach, Zach White. Now, Zach was a graduate assistant under Urban Meyer 2009 to 2015 at Florida State. I was beginning in 2009. He actually then moved to Ohio State when Urban Meyer was hired as coach. The thing with Zach White, if you saw the ESPN interview, and I would urge you strongly to pull that up. Now, here's a guy who, number one, was strongly on the offensive as far as his explanations. Essentially, number one, he said anything that may have happened is between he and his wife and not for the consumption of everyone else. Number two, this one I have a little problem with. He said that any wounds that his wife, Courtney Smith, had sustained were defensive in nature. What he tried to do, he tried to be a little bit on the slick side and try to make himself the victim. And if that's not the height of hubris, I don't know what is. But what ended up happening, the other part of this that's very, very, very telling is if you look at the interview itself, you pretty much know when somebody's lying. His eyes were darting to the left and to the right. He was being very cold and very calculated in what he said. Now, his wife his ex-wife, Courtney Smith, is very credible. And the funny thing is, it was interesting on Friday of last week, okay? Thursday, I post Brett McMurtry's podcast interview with Richard Deitch, one of the better podcasts out there, and I present it to you weekly, the Richard Deitch podcast. We'll get to that in a moment. But what I want to let you know is she seemed totally credible, very attractive woman, very believable, I will say, in the snippets that I've seen of her. She hasn't done a lot of interviews, but she's done brief media appearances and brief snippets seen over television. The situation with Courtney Smith is that she's very believable. And Brett McMurtry, former ESPN college football reporter, he broke this thing on Facebook on Wednesday. So Thursday, Richard Deitsch, the sports media podcast, which I present to you on accessmediaglobal.com every week, just so happened to be there. So I posted that on Thursday, said, okay, good. This advances the story. Essentially, if you listen to the podcast, Brett McMurtry goes through everything he did communications-wise with Zach Smith's ex-wife, Courtney. Okay? And he went through text messages. He made phone calls. And there is nothing that I feel that he has reported that he may have missed. He seemed to cover everything. He crossed all his T's and dotted all his I's. He had all his ducks in a row. Everything was above board. Now, on the same day that Urban Meyer releases this statement regarding his mishandling, his lying to the Big Ten media, he didn't necessarily put it that way on Twitter. At the exact same time, Zach Smith is being interviewed by ESPN. The Entertainment and Sports Programming Network is one of the largest networks in the United States. Everyone knows ESPN based on the programming they have, based on the reach they have into 60 to 70 million homes by cable and by non-cable television, with the proliferation of YouTube, Netflix, and Instagram. They have some of their programming even on Instagram at this time, just to let you know their reach. Their reach is very large in the United States. And Zach Smith looked every bit on the defensive. I'm not going to pronounce his guilt. We don't know. I wasn't there. But I'm going to tell you, with the fact that he seemed to be shifting his eyes back and forth and being very calculated in his answers and also very defensive. Also, he took the time to actually blame his wife, his ex-wife, for the defensive wounds, making him the victim. This was very, very strange, but I find that you want to get your primary and secondary sources, as they teach you in the college level ranks. You want to have a primary source, you want to have a secondary source. So the primary source, in this case, Courtney Smith. Very plausible. That's Brett McMurtry, Richard Deitsch podcast, not SI Media podcast. He used to do that. That was the sports media podcast through Player FM. I have that available. That's up for you to listen to. I want you to listen to that first, and then you can decide whether Courtney Smith is plausible and believable, and I believe she is. Secondly, you want to go to the full interview of Zach Smith, and you want to look at that body language. Body language communicates a lot, and you can usually tell when somebody's squirming, somebody is trying to steer something in a direction that makes them look really good, but yet in the same breath denying that things took place. Now, he admitted to some things, not specifically that he did, but when you put the story of Courtney Smith and Zach Smith together, somebody's lying, and it's not Courtney Smith, in my opinion. So I want you to go find that ESPN interview with Zach Smith. I want you to look at the full interview. You can listen to the Richard Deitsch podcast that I posted. Enter Richard Deitsch into the search bar at accessmediaglobal.com. You'll be able to find Brett McMurtry's podcast up there, and I want you to listen to that as well. That would be my encouragement to you. Now, as far as Urban Meyer goes, this is a situation similar to one Rick Pitino, where the University of Louisville fired him for cause. Now, Urban Meyer has $40 million left on a contract. A few years left on a contract, $40 million on the table. Now, I think what might happen is they're going to find out that Urban Meyer did not do his due diligence in reporting. Now, many of us in the United States live in what we call reporting states. Anybody with knowledge that's in high positions must report allegations of abuse immediately, especially public employees. Okay? And Urban Meyer did, I'm not saying he didn't have that opportunity. I think he chose to protect Zach Smith and thus protect himself. But once again, Urban Meyer's on the hot seat. He is on paid administrative leave, and the Ohio State Buckeyes have begun fall practice in anticipation of the NC2A season. So we'll see, but that's the advancement of the story. That's giving my opinion. You're tuned in to the AccessMediaGlobal.com From the Bench podcast. I'm Mark Janish, giving you opinion and analysis of the world of sports. And that's what I'm here to do. I enjoy doing it. I want to thank you all for listening at this particular time. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to LeBron James. LeBron James has taken his I Promise program to a new level. He spent over $441 million in his playing career lifetime, which spans about 15 years, paying for college tuition of underprivileged children in Akron, Ohio. He stepped it up last week with the help of the Akron educators, and he built his own school. And the fact of the matter is, he wrote the check, okay? This is a guy who wants to use his platform to make statements in this season of political unrest in the United States. He is a voice in the sports community. Now, I'm critical of LeBron James in a couple of things. Number one, I believe he has handled a couple things incorrectly. Number one, the decision to leave Cleveland the first time and head to Miami. Handled totally wrong. Secondly, early in his career, he was beaten in the first round by the Boston Celtics. He did not appear before the media. A little bit of sour grapes there. The only other problem I have with LeBron, and, you know, in his position, he has the right to have a little bit of ego and so forth. I just think that there is what I would call fan fatigue because the media is promoting and has been promoting LeBron James since he was 18 years old out of Akron. I think when he was 18 years old and he got his first contract bonus money, he bought a Hummer, okay? So, and the thing about it is that Sports Illustrated and other publications at that time was promoting him as the next Michael Jordan. I'll say this. There's only going to be one Michael Jordan, 6-0 in championship games, championship series, 6 trophies. LeBron James, 3-9. LeBron James, to me, is just a little bit overhyped, and he does have a huge ego. However, he has grown through and evolved in a positive way for the most part. So my applause to the I Promise program. My applause that LeBron James has stepped up in his community. Now, the problem that I have is LeBron James and the current president of the United States are in, I'm not going to say a Twitter war, but the fact of the matter is the President of the United States loves to use Twitter. And he is a very opinionated, very bullish in a sense that anything he doesn't like, he's going to criticize. Anything we don't understand, we always criticize. Now, LeBron James has been in controversy with the likes of conservative television host Laura Ingraham. She came out and said some things in response to LeBron James saying some things regarding this president that she didn't like. She just told him to shut up and dribble. Well, first of all, LeBron James is not going to just shut up and dribble. He's actually gone ahead, arriving in Los Angeles. He is producing a documentary miniseries. I think it's about 6 episodes that I know of over home box office paid television service in the United States. And he is titling it Just Shut Up and Dribble. Now, the thing is the president can say all he wants. But the one thing and one of the main reasons, along with the fact that I felt I had some broadcast ability, I felt that I had some knowledge after 42 years of watching sports. The first event I remember watching was the Super Bowl 10, the 21-17 victory by the Pittsburgh Steelers when Lynn Swann made many acrobatic catches, somewhat reminiscent of Rudolph Nureyev, ballet dancer, because some of those catches were true, in a sporting sense, ballet on the field. But I have to agree with LeBron James. Sports is not a divider. For many of you across the nation and around the world, I can say Salam Alaikum to the Muslim community. That's an Arabic blessing. I can say to the Jewish community, Shalom. I can say to the Christian community, sports fans, God bless you, and let's continue to hope and pray for peace on the field. But I said a couple of podcasts ago that I was not going to be afraid to comment when these political stands were taken. Now, first of all, the player protests have been diluted and hijacked in the sense that the NFL does not understand and does not know what direction they want to go. They want to protect their bottom line, but yet they're placating the union by spending all this money, hopefully in assisting the players with charitable causes that they believe in that will help with things like police brutality and other issues as that goes on. Now, I have to also agree with LeBron James that the president is using these wedge issues like the national anthem controversy to form a wedge between the sporting community, and he's trying to pander and placate to his base of supporters. And there are a lot of them out there who agree with the president, but the way the president is going about it is totally immature. I would say childish would be a good word. And he's doing it totally the wrong way. And LeBron James is not a guy that you want to mess with. And I think the president took the time to be critical of LeBron James, but not understanding LeBron James. I don't know, some of his staff, some of his researchers, he could have found out this information. But the fact of the matter is, some people just want to politicize these things. First of all, the president needs to tone it down regarding the national anthem in the NFL. The NFL is having enough problems trying to determine the national anthem policy. They also have the helmet rules. They're trying to define what a hit is and what it isn't based on the fact that they decided a couple of years ago, you hit the crown of a helmet, you're being penalized. This is going to be something that as we approach preseason on Thursday, Thursday is the opening of the NFL American football preseason. We have some stuff that is going to have on, and there's going to be a little bit of growing pains. What's a legal hit? What's not a legal hit? All these things are going to have to be hashed out before the season begins, and I don't envy the NFL. What I am disappointed in is the NFL seems to be wanting to save face and protect the shield rather than come up with a coherent policy, and that makes fans like myself upset. It makes the players upset, and it just is a total turnoff, if you will, regarding NFL football. And many fans are turning away. Ticket sales are down, revenue is down, and so is ratings, television ratings, and all the products that are bought based on jersey sales and the proliferation of fantasy football and things of this nature, which are good for the sport. The sport is being tarnished by the fact of the matter, there's people like the President of the United States who just need to stay out of the situation. Stay in your lane, Mr. President. You have been appointed to govern the nation until 2021. I'm going to say this respectfully, Mr. President. Maybe you need to get off of Twitter, keep your mouth shut, and govern as best you can. LeBron James will do his philanthropic promotion of education. He will do his philanthropic best to produce programming in Hollywood. As I've said before, I believe LeBron James's goal is to be the first $1 billion with a B dollar worth player. Number two, I do believe that LeBron James wants to be either a minority or majority owner of an NBA franchise. I can't tell you when that's going to be, but this man is driven. This man is successful. And what do people do when anybody is successful in any realm? They want to pull them down. And so, Mr. President, you might want to get off Twitter. You might want to keep yourself a little bit more quiet as regards the NFL. You might want to stop picking fights with philanthropic basketball players who know what they're doing, not only on the court but in the business of life. So that's my take. I am not afraid to approach these political issues. Why? I'm an independent broadcaster with a small audience, and I don't have ABC backing me up. I don't have CBS. I don't have NBC. I don't have Fox News. I don't have ESPN backing me up. I'm an independent broadcaster. This broadcast is paid for exclusively by me. This broadcast and this website are paid for exclusively by yours truly, the person you're listening to over Libsyn and Stitcher Radio. We're hoping you enjoy this type of stuff. We're going to get on to some other issues now, but I wanted to let you know that I'm not going to continue to shy away when it is appropriate and the political sphere moves into the sports sphere. And I have to say one more time, this podcast, one of the reasons this podcast exists is to unify listeners, unify those of you listening on your tablet, on your Android phone, on your computer, however you're listening to this broadcast. Sports is never intended to be a divider. The blessing here is I can speak to the Buddhist community. I can speak to the Jewish community. I can speak to the black community. I can speak to the white community. I can speak to any religious community that I seek to under the banner of sports. And we can discuss soccer. I may not agree with your religious philosophy, your religious theology, but at the same time, I'm here to nurture, comment, and hopefully bring you some enjoyment for 20 to 30 minutes. Now, I'm already 30 minutes into this podcast, and I'm not done yet. So I'm going to just continue to let you know what we have as far as what's up, what's coming up, and other things of this nature. Okay? As far as going to the website, if you were to go to accessmediaglobal.com right now, you would see the following stuff. You would see the latest From the Bench podcast. This podcast is going to immediately be posted after the broadcast as soon as possible, as soon as the editing and as soon as the preparation for the upload is completed. Right now, we have under the latest news tab, Rebecca Lowe, Premier League TV host in the United States. She actually has hosted the Premier League package on NBC Sports Network and the NBC family of networks for 6 years. She's interviewed by Richard Deitch, Richard Deitch Sports Media Podcast. You can also hear Richard Deitch on AM 59 in Toronto. He's a part-time talk show host. He's now moved to Canada, and he writes for The Athletic. The other couple things you see here are a couple of Around the League podcasts. There's two of them up. One was just done yesterday. You see the NFL logos there if you're on the homepage. You also see Access Media Global. That's my logo that I added. You see some soccer podcasts. The Premier League season. That's why you see Rebecca Lowe, and then next to that, at the bottom with the Access Media Global logo, you see the Premier League being reviewed by the Total Soccer Show. I believe that's a good podcast to get all your needs and information as best that I can provide you right now. There was a day about 7 years ago when I had a one-page blog. I would do the Premier League league-wide podcast. It was a great podcast. But I have two of the four preseason podcasts looking at every team with a little bit of depth before the season begins. Now, the season begins on Friday. I'm not sure, haven't looked where that can be found locally, but it will be in the United States on the NBC family of networks if it is televised. And then you see the Oakland Raiders training camp. One of the things I don't have up there right now is the Los Angeles Rams training camp. Last week I indicated that I would be covering the Raiders on Monday, Rams on Tuesday, Chargers on Wednesday, and the Seahawks on Thursday. And Thursday is the beginning of the season, the preseason game number 1. All right. So that pretty much is it in a nutshell regarding the From the Bench podcast for today, for this evening. It's a little bit late here on the West Coast of the United States. This podcast will be posted immediately. I want to thank everybody for listening because, to be honest with you, this is a labor of love. Yes, it does cost money, but I don't ask you for a dime to support it. I just want you to enjoy sports, and I'm going to try to create an environment wherein you can go ahead and do that. Don't forget our MLB baseball site, NBA basketball news, NHL, and even if I'm not speaking about these issues, there's constant updates with some headline feeds and RSS feeds available. There's also some Twitter feeds available, especially as we approach the soccer season. Let me go ahead and go to that page just for you right now. We're looking to hopefully reestablish a international page. Somewhere along the line, that page magically disappeared. But we will see what we can do to restore it soon. I'm not going to say it's going to be right now because it won't, but I do want to go ahead and take a look at that. And what you can do, I'm going to go to the soccer page for you right now. All the AMG soccer blog posts are there, including the things I posted today, some MLS weekly podcasts, who should be the next U.S. men's national team coach. There's Major League Baseball. I haven't had a chance to speak of baseball as much as I would like. We do have some NHL hockey posts up. We also have some NCAA news. And don't forget the Contact Me page. So we're going to be back later in the week. We're going to discuss some football. Now, it should be noted for those of you that are new listeners to the podcast, you know the teams that I've covered. I've named them within this podcast and will name them again, not at this time. But I will say this. I look at the preseason just to see how teams look because generally you're not going to know which position players are doing well until week 3 or 4. So the first 2 preseason games, maybe this week, the 9th and the 10th and the 11th, and maybe the 16th, 17th, and 18th. Those are just games you want to see how your team looks. And then as we approach week 3 and 4 of the preseason, then we get a better idea of who's had a good spring camp, spring training, or summer training camp as we get into the season, which actually is going to begin September the 6th. I believe we have on NBC in the United States, the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons. And then, of course, Sunday, September 9th, we have the full slate of games. And then Monday Night Football, which has been a staple in the United States amongst football fans since 1970, was the first Monday Night Football game televised over ESPN. We have the New York Jets and the Detroit Lions in game number 1. They usually do a doubleheader. So the game 1 of the September 10th Monday Night Football debut is the Lions and the Jets at 4:10 p.m. Pacific time, followed by John Gruden's debut with the Oakland Raiders against Sean McVay and the much improved Los Angeles Rams. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have more baseball highlights up. There are times where I will miss that, occasionally a day or two here or there. So don't worry, we're going to bring that back. We're also going to put together a Ram Tuesday, which I give you Ram news, any Ram podcast or video. Same thing with the Chargers and same thing with the Seahawks. I do believe the Seahawks will finish with a 7-9 record. If they do anything better than 7-9, I'm going to be surprised. And then as far as the up-and-comers, the San Francisco 49ers, probably going to be 8-8, 9-7. Would expect the Los Angeles Rams, with their improvement, to continue to dominate the NFC West. So that is going to wrap this edition of the From the Bench podcast up. I hope it's been a benefit to you. You can go to the Contact Me page, leave a comment at accessmediaglobal.com. If you want to go to the Twitter page, I'll have that up for you here in just a moment. I'm going to pull up the Twitter handle. I'm going to give that to you here in just a moment. You want to reach out now. I don't get into a lot of discussions with fans, but we want to make sure that whatever you post on social media is respectful, is salient, and has some intelligence behind it. I'm not going to get into any arguments, and I don't want any listeners or contributors on Twitter trying to politicize a bunch of stuff that is unnecessary. Want to say hello to Michelle Sports X. Also want to say hello to all my followers on Twitter. Right now, I have 35. I had an old Twitter account, Mark at WORLDOFSPOR. Some have migrated over, some have left, but you can get a hold of me on Twitter, Mark Janisch, Janisch, at Mark Access Media. Mark Janisch at Mark Access Media. You have a comment, you have a question, I'm going to answer that as best I can. Want to thank all of you for listening. Once again, this is Mark Janisch on the From the Bench podcast for August the 6th. August the 7th, 2018. Now, what will happen is this podcast is being recorded late on the West Coast. My provider will put it up immediately, but they will tag it with a 3-hour time extension on the East Coast. So right now, for example, it's 1:42. It's actually 1:40 Eastern time. That's probably going to take about 20 minutes for me to post this. So you're going to see a 2 a.m. post, but you also see a day change because in the Eastern time zone of the United States, we're already into Wednesday morning. So thank you for listening. You're welcome to go to accessmediaglobal.com at any time for all the latest in sports news and opinion. My name is Mark Janisch, your host. Thanks for listening, and may you be blessed, and may your sports experience be the highest and best it can be, and hopefully I've contributed something positive to that experience. You have a great evening and a great day, a great afternoon, everyone, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Once again, this podcast and any other podcast that has been produced can be heard on Libsyn and Stitcher Radio at accessmediaglobal.com. Libsyn Classic, you can go to Stitcher Radio as well. Thanks for listening. God bless you. God keep you. And appreciate your time.